Hello, everyone. Welcome to another bonus training on how to use NOD3x for authority, positioning, and traffic. So today we are going to discuss social media, traffic, and data with David Amerland. And if you don't know who David Amerland is, allow me to share my screen for a second and just walk you through a little bit of this guy so that you should be able to grab everything that you can from his brain, because we're going to open it up and actually let you come in and ask David any questions that you might have. So this is, as you can see, Forbes magazine. Forbes website. And David Amerland is one of the authors there and the only one who got 1 million readers for one single article. So let me tell you a little bit about David. David's involvement with the web goes back to the days when the number of websites in existence could fit into a printed 80-page directory. And SEO consisted of keyword stuffing and pixel-wide hidden text. Remember those days? Since those less enlightened days, he has worked with blue-chip multinationals and individual entrepreneurs alike, helping them craft SEO and social media marketing strategies that work with their internal company cultures and deliver value to their target audience. And as I'm reading and I'm telling you a little bit about him, I'm just going to scroll down this article because I'm sure you're curious. And I'm also going to link to this article so you guys can read it for yourselves if you want to. David led the regional mini MBA program on social media crisis management for Rutgers University, and he's helped shape the marketing strategy of publicly quoted tech companies across Europe and the US. He trained in chemical engineering. David brings a scientist data-centric focus to subjects such as the analysis and development of trust across social networks, the economic impact of search, and the evolution of branding because of social media. He is the author of 8 best-selling books, including SEO Help and Google Semantic Search. He writes for a number of publications and websites, including, as you can see here, Forbes, and HP UK, Journalist, and Social Media Today. He's hosting Hangouts, and when he's not writing or surfing the web, he spends time running analysis for clients and gives them speeches internationally on how search and social media are changing everything. And David, if you guys have read the description of our Hangout today, you know that David regards NOD3x as a pair of eyes and ears in a sea of data. And without it, you're driving blind, which means that you may never get where you want to be, where you want to go. So if you recall, the first Hangouts that we did was talking about goals, goal settings, and and knowing what you want to get out of NOD3x before you even started. Remember the one sentence in your worksheet that said, I'm using NOD3x to track X in order to achieve Y. This is what David is doing. He is using NOD3x to be his eyes and ears for himself and clients. And before we dive into speaking with David, I just want to say hi to a few people here and recognize them. So hi, Bill Reid. Bill says, gosh, David must be really old. Not with his body, real. And Danielle, hi, nice to see you. And Christina is here, and she's saying, hi, everyone. Happy to be able to join in. Hi, Christina. We're waving back at you. And Peter Feldman is here saying hot. And of course, we have with us the amazing John Dietrich, who has been such an awesome support through this entire journey. And I'm sure many of you, if you haven't yet, joined the NOD3x community so that you can interact with John face-to-face. And let's see who else is saying hi here. I see that Michael is here, and sorry, I'm scrolling down, and I see Steven. Hi, Steven. And I see Molly is here, looking forward to this event, and we're looking forward to it too. So guys, we are, as I said, going to open this up in the 30-minute mark and let you guys speak to David face-to-face. So start typing your questions. If you have any questions about data analysis or writing books or social media or understanding trust and building trust with social media, David is the person to talk about. And again, before I let David in, I just want to show you what David is using social media, NOD3x, and data for. And if you haven't yet looked at his profile, you'll see that he's using a lot of data to kind of like break the myth and the conversations that are happening across the web, whether it comes to the European crisis, whether it comes to, I love this one, sharks and mosquitoes, which one is the biggest killer on the web. Data will tell you that. If you guys have seen the video that I think it's a surfer. It was one of the surfing competition where a shark attacked the world leading surfer, and it became a big thing. Actually, with data, you start realizing that all the stuff that the media is using to scare you is not as big of a deal as it might seem. So, David, welcome to our Hangout.
Ifat, hi, thank you very much for the invite, and I'm really glad to be here.
And I'm sure you know that we are going to open it up to people to start to come in and ask you questions face to face. So,
yeah, sure.
Right. So what's really fun, David, is that you and I have not done this for a while. I mean, we started out together with Hangouts, and now you're all over the place in Hangouts. You just came here from a previous Hangout.
I did, yes. Yeah. It's funny how these things turn out, right?
Yeah. So, and I remember the first days when, we just started with Hangouts, and not many people dove into it, and still many people today use Hangout as a one-way communication. And I'd love to hear a little bit, before we dive into NOD3x and data, more about your experience with the human elements of Hangouts. What did you find that this brings into social media and audience building and relationship that now you're just basically jumping from one to the other?
Well, inevitably they're one of the perhaps only viable shortcuts we have on the web in terms of building relationships and establishing trust. And trust is key to everything. Essentially, there's no sense of trust in something, no relational exchange of any kind takes place. And we tend to think of trust as something which we need in order to buy something or have some kind of really heavy exchange, but it's not. It's always an exchange of something for something else. Your time for something which you'll get back, your attention for a bit of knowledge. So everything takes place through a risk assessment algorithm that people run through their heads, and they think, oh yeah, it's worth my time to spend 5 minutes reading, I don't know, something in New York Times because it's a New York Times, right? So you tend to trust their content, and even if it's low quality, you're pretty certain you're going to find something useful there. But if it's a newspaper you've never heard of, for instance, you're highly unlikely to go there unless there's a very good, compelling reason. And that shows that how difficult it is to actually get something done like that, which is just reading an article, if there's no sense of trust involved. So getting back to the Hangouts now, we talk about relationships and relationship building, whether it's from people to people or business to people, which are it's also people to people. Then how do you do that? Well, you can do it through content, but it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time, it is expensive, and it has hurdles to overcome. Or you can do it through a Hangout. It is very visual. You get to see the non-verbal cues, which are very important. You get to get a sense of feeling for the person or the brand you're connecting with and the people behind it. And then trust is easier to form from that stage on. Now, I'll say here that although it's a shortcut, it doesn't necessarily mean that the moment you're going to hang out on there and say something, people will trust you. What it makes it easier is it makes it easier for them to assess whether they will trust you or not. So you still need to be trustworthy to begin with.
And you need to kind of raise fans, and you've got plenty of fans in the audience.
Oleg is just back from holiday. He's full of energy right now.
He is, and he's even cheering for John, so this is really great. So one of the conversations that you and I had, just lately, every time we have a conversation, I learn some new aspect of you, which I love. So one of the things we just discussed was mailing list. You are doing social media completely different than anyone doing it on the web. And yes, your site gets 50,000 unique visitors a month, and you don't have any mailing list. You're not pushing, you're not sending emails, you're not sending notifications, nothing like that. You're coming to me with
no pop-up pages.
No what?
No pop-up pages asking you to sign up to the newsletter or anything.
And yet, you are 8-time bestseller, 50,000 visitors a month, and I think you're 500,000 followers on Google Plus now, right?
Yeah, getting near that, yeah.
Yeah, I too am just under 1 million. so, so how do you do that? Like, you're doing social media completely different, and yet we were discussing that you're using Nodex as the eyes and ears. So you probably have a completely different view of how to use Nodex that we had with Cara, and this is really what I want to focus on today. So first, why don't you have a mailing list, and then how do you use Nodex differently?
Well, for somebody who advises companies on marketing, I must say that I hate marketing. I hate all the little tricks and all the emotional triggers which take the view that, hey, as a marketer, I understand the emotional profile of the person who comes to my website, and if I press the right buttons, I'm going to get the right response. I think generally, and that goes back to the time of when we used to create marketing personas, which I also detest because they're not true and they make generalizations. We used to take the view that people were like, sheep or automatons. We needed to find their button, and they're not. We know that they're individuals. They have the same needs and means and commitments that we have. They have the same interests, have the same sort of critical points, and we need to treat them like that. And even if they're not, sometimes I think people tend to be exactly what you treat them as. You need to treat them intelligently, and they respond in kind. Because I hate all those things on websites I go to, if I go to a website, within 3 sort of seconds of being there, a pop-up comes up, and they want me to sign up for their newsletter. And this is how they phrase it. They give me in big letters, yes, I want to be kept informed and ahead of the rest. Or, something which is pretty much like, no, I want to remain stupid. And they expect you to, make the wise choice here. First of all, unless that website continues to pump out great content, I'm unlikely to visit it. And secondly, they really irritated me because it's transparent what they're doing. The whole thing about transparency on the web, all the past 3-4 years we've been interacting and engaging in Google+. If you and I and people like us have put out a lot of very transparent information about how marketing works. We've told everybody, this is how it works, this is what happens, this is what we expect to happen. If this doesn't happen, this is how we adjust it. We understand the tricks, we understand the triggers. Mm-hmm. And then we also understand what really makes it work. The secret sauce to this is the human connection. It's how you generate trust. It's how you generate a relationship. You and I, example here, work in entirely different spheres, although we have similar subjects. But because of the connection, I keep an eye on your content. I actually go out of my way to see what you're posting because of that relationship. If you had tried to coerce me, it wouldn't have worked. Which brings us back to,
it also might say that I'm really bad courser.
yeah. Well, I think it's just a very genuine person, and this is exactly, what comes across. And I think this is what we need. Case in point, I know Oleg is in the audience, and Oleg is a marketer in many ways, and he markets his stuff, but he's also extremely genuine in what he says and the way he presents things. He doesn't dress him up. He's very direct in the things that he puts together, which makes it very easy for somebody to make an assessment of the value that he puts out, and then make a sort of a final decision on whether to connect with him or not. And I think that's exactly how marketing should move from here on. This is why we need Hangouts on air. This is why we need more connectivity, because it does allow that relationship to form on a more equitable basis. We can form more real connections. We can be more authentic while still working, still trying to make a living, still trying to sell things, still trying to get people to buy them. But we're no longer trying to be, within inverted commas, clever with the stuff we do. So that's why I have stripped my website of anything that doesn't deliver value. I put out articles, videos, and I have podcasts, and they're all accessible, they're all free. You don't have to sign up for anything, you don't have to jump through hoops. Just go there whenever you feel like it and consume. And if for whatever reason it stops working for you, that's great, you just go away. I won't send you a reminder like, hey, I haven't seen you for a couple of months. Why didn't you try this free chapter?
Right. Well, but you're bringing it. So there's two very interesting things here. One is, if I don't want to miss anything, we have such a busy life, and we do choose who to follow and who not to follow. But if there's a way, like, I want to be in the loop, right? And I want to know every time you share a new article or every time you send something up. And email is still one of the best ways to notify people because they check their emails all the time. Then it's kind of like, go ahead.
I mean, theoretically, you're right, but the practice of it is that we're all really busy. I know that, I get between 100 and 120 emails a day, and 50% of them will be work-related and fairly urgent, and I'm always behind answering. So, we're all still overwhelmed with email, even though now spam is not a massive problem anymore, and relevance tends to be a lot better. So really, theoretically it's right, but it isn't really. I mean, we all have our own shortcuts, and what I do about content I like to see, I do two things. First of all, I know the people I mustn't miss, and when I find the time, I go and catch up. It's as simple as that. So I don't need to be reminded, for example, that XYZ has great content. I know that because I know who they are. I know they're important to me in terms of what they do. So I'll go and look at. I don't need any emails from them or any notifications. It will make me feel guilty and more stressed that I'm falling behind. The other thing is I'm blessed with great connections on G+. I connect all the people who do things similarly with what I do or have similar interests. And what happens then is, even if I log on, if I don't log on for a couple of days and I log on a day, 2 days later, content which is important to me will surface because other people share it and I'll see it. And that acts almost like a natural filter. And in real life we work like this. When you go to the office, you don't talk to every single individual there to find out what happened, right? Why? Because
you know who to talk to.
Well, you have 2 or 3 key contacts, and they sort of summarize things for you. And they say, oh, this happened, that happened. And if you think, something they told you is important and relevant to your work, you find out something about it and go and find the person responsible directly. And that's how we work digitally, in the same clever, smart way, which brings us to NOD3x now in data. Because, because, we talk about NOD3x, and I think, from my point of view, and I use NOD3x primarily for my clients, not so much for myself, NOD3x is basically a semantic analysis tool which looks at data and tells me what that data means, and that's really important. Now, if a client is running a campaign, you really need to understand how that campaign is impacting on the social sphere. And the only way to do that is to actually see what the data is doing. So how do you do that? I mean, without NOD3x, you don't see anything on the data. You're flying blind. You can say, oh, what I've had, 10,000 people saw that. Oh, yes, great. But what did they do with it? Did they just see it?
Right? Isn't that amazing? Because right, I can't remember. There was we did a campaign. I'm not going to mention what it was, but we did a campaign, and it was okay. It wasn't that great, right? But when we looked at when I looked at the marketing analysis of the achievements that we've done, over 5 million people. What is it? There's like awareness in Twitter, right? They could have seen it, impressions.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a potential audience. Potential audience. I think, I mean, if we take that sort of extrapolation, potential audience could be 500,000, right? But it's what you say. What does that mean, potential audience? Well, they could possibly see it. Okay, I mean, if we think of an action point, for somebody to take action on something, this is what you need. The right piece of content needs to find the right individual at the right moment. So, me, for instance, sending you an email notification saying, hey, in fact, this is a great article on how to optimize your website while you're on your way to the gym. You're going to think, oh, David is bugging me now. And I hate, although you want to articulate it, you'll think, oh, I've got to cut my gym time short. This might be important. I'm stressed, and I'm already stressed. And you begin to hate me. Probably not actively, but you know what I mean. Basically, there's enough stress already in the world without processes adding to it. We should be using social media connections and campaigns and even marketing to make things easier, not harder. So when it comes to a campaign for a client, I really need to see how far did the data go? How far did the campaign go? Who interacted with it? What did they do with it? When did they do it? What was important to them? And this is where NOD3x actually comes in handy, because it allows us to deconstruct the data layer, to find out who the influencers were, to find out what was important to them when they actually reshared it. What were the key words they actually used? You know, I might think a campaign is important because, I don't know, it does this particular thing, but for a client, for the audience, it might be important for different reasons. And if it's important to them for those reasons which the client has overlooked, the client needs to know. So essentially, if we think of what semantic analysis does, it doesn't just show us what people do, it shows how they think. And then we begin to realize that what we do as a business has to find essentially a contact point with how they think about what we do. And that's when you get a synchronicity working. Now, in the past, this was hit and miss. You know, you could put together a campaign, maybe 1 million people would see it. You think, if you get a bit of a spike, that's because of that. But you didn't know what actually triggered it, which meant that you were caught up in a losing proposition of constantly chasing eyeballs, constantly putting in more money, constantly trying to broaden the target audience as much as possible, because you weren't certain, if you were hitting the right people.
So there's so many, you're consulting. I just read your bio, and you're consulting really big companies in Europe and in the US. And there are so many tools, like you just said, in order to monitor sentiment or find out the right keywords, or even Google analytics. Like I'm losing language. Yes, analytics. Today, there's so many great tools. What makes you, as a consultant, use NOD3x and not any of the other tools?
Well, a couple of things. One is accuracy. I have found it to be incredibly accurate in terms of the meta layers that it actually breaks the data down to. And from my point of view, it also creates a unified interface for looking at different layers, at different social platforms. So I can analyze the impact of a campaign in Google+, and then also in Twitter. And I can see, for instance, how the Google campaign jumped to Twitter before the Twitter campaign took off. And those two things are different, because some people will reshare content from Google Plus to Twitter, and you can see how that content was received and interacted with. And then when you actually create the specific Twitter content for that campaign, then you can actually compare and say, you can see whether the audience had a different mindset or a different kind of approach, or something resonated more with them than something else. And that's what I absolutely love about NOD3x, because for me, because I'm familiar with the interface, it makes it very easy to basically strip all the layers and take a really good look at what happens underneath.
So I know we haven't done any of the training yet with NOD3x, guys, and we are going to get there. And this is kind of like, might be a little bit overwhelming to someone who's just coming to NOD3x and starting and hearing about layers and campaigns jumping from one social network to another. Know that you're going to learn all these steps, so don't worry about that. We're just giving you the overlook and showing you how different case studies of how different people are using it for different needs. So, David, when you set up a campaign for your clients, what is the process that you go through? How are you using NOD3x for that?
Well, I tend to focus on the shareable parts of it. Obviously, hashtags play a very important role because most campaigns have a brand amplification aspect to them. I'll be checking to see how the name of the brand is mentioned, whether there's positive or negative sentiment, or even neutral, because that also gives me an idea of how it works. And then I look to see specific keywords associated with the campaign itself.
So you would set up a project with specific hashtags. Would you be looking at competitors? Would you how would you be connecting with the data in NOD3x?
Well, every campaign that is set up does have its own hashtag these days. Makes it easier to share. It also acts as a shorthand for the audience, so they understand better what it is. And it also makes it easier to track, obviously. And it's good for indexing in search. So there's a lot of elements to this which are very useful.
Are there? Can you give me like a case study or a result or an example of how you use NOD3x for a client's campaign?
Well, I can't give you anything specific, but I can give you something generic.
Yeah, there you go. Just don't mention names. I
Okay,
have a friend who has a friend who has this disease.
yeah, who has an uncle, yeah, who knows somebody. Well, there's a recent campaign I set up where we're looking at a client who actually had a breakthrough to usage of structured data, and they wanted to be known for that. So the campaign itself used their brand name because we want to see how that would affect, how would that impact on the audience. Particularly how the client happens to be strong in their area, but generally they're unknown because they're very sort of inward looking. So that was quite interesting to see. But then we also used a hashtag, which at the time was structured data. And that was very generic, and we had to see how that worked with that particular campaign. And then there was a secondary hashtag we used, which was a little bit more specific to what they did with the structured data. So we used that as well. And then we used a number of keywords. One of them was semantic markup, automotive, and the other was automotive industry search. So we use those things to actually see how quickly the message spread through Google+, through Twitter, through Facebook, and who reshared it, who were the main influencers, what did those influencers do, how they reshared it. And also, it was interesting to see where hashtags got used, again, by other people, or they simply didn't, because it didn't resonate sufficiently. So all these things allow you to actually make a good assessment about the emotional impact of what you're doing on the audience. And any kind of marketing, at the end of the day, is exactly that. You're trying to form an emotional connection with somebody. If there's no emotional response, you're on a losing streak because you're only playing on price. You're saying, oh, I'm cheaper than somebody else, which means it's only a matter of time before somebody else becomes cheaper than you. So, you don't really have clients or customers in a situation. You have opportunistic relationships, opportunistic buys and purchases, which, they don't make a lot of sense for a business.
I love when you said that, because that's kind of like, I call it don't just get traffic, but build an audience. And that's like what you're saying, right? It's like, I mentioned it a few times. The power of celebrities is that they have an audience that they can take with them to everywhere they go. The minute there's no celebrities, there's nothing.
Exactly.
There's regular people, right?
Exactly. I mean, we are firmly in the attention economy. A lot of, everything we do, more tools, more content, more things to distract us. And the only thing that's constant in all this is that the day continues to have 24 hours and there's still 60 minutes to every hour. So essentially, that's it. This is the limiting quality. The moment something needs to work, what do you need? You need to grab somebody's attention long enough for them to actually think and assess whether that is for them or not. So if you make an unbeatable offer to somebody who's really busy and stressed out, what are they going to say? Not right now,
right.
because they're too busy and stressed out.
Yeah.
But if you capture their attention, even though what you're saying may be wrong for them completely, and you've got them thinking, what have you earned? Well, you've earned somebody's respect because they've given you their time and they got something back. You have possibly earned somebody's referral. They'll give you to their friends. They'll say, hey, the thing you were looking about, I just found it for you, and here it is.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And that's exactly what you're saying about the audience. This is why celebrities are so important. And if we sort of take apart how celebrities operate, well, they operate like a brand with a strong emotional connection to an audience to which they go to extreme lengths to build relationships with. If you look at George Clooney, for instance, if you ever meet him at an airport...
I always look on George Clooney,
I thought you were going to say that. Well, here's the next bit. If you ever meet him at an airport and you go up to him and talk to him, he will actually give you his time. He will do that. And he said he knows that what he does takes a lot of his time when he's at airports and public places, but that's how he invests in the audience he builds. He actually respects the fact they're human, and he treats them the same way he would like to be treated. And I think that's amazing. But it's also very clever, very intelligent. He gets the human factor. And a lot of businesses still don't. And that's the trouble. Now, with NOD3x, we can actually understand how that human connection works through the data layer, through the data interface, which is why it's so valuable.
So when you're saying human connection, before we get there, because I love that train of thought, but I just want to grab Molly's comment. Thanks, Chris Messina, for creating the hashtag. It's so true. And we had an interview about that that hashtag, and it kind of feels like, you know, if we took the hashtags away, we're all going to be drowning in a sea of spammy keywords. So we're talking about the audience and the human connections and relationships and how we find that sentiment using NOD3x. So let's dive that in this section. But I just want to let everybody know that in a few minutes I'm going to open the Hangout and just share the link to join the Hangout in the Google event so that you guys can jump in and actually interact with us. And Oleg, no, I'm not going to sign up for your newsletter. So if you have any questions, if you have anything to add to the conversation, not just want to be in the Hangout with us, but you actually want to participate in the conversation, click that link, make sure that you're muted before you join us, and that you have muted the Hangout that's playing on the event page, and come in, and we'd love to see and hear from you. So, David, how do you use that emotional sentiment? Like, for example, when you start a campaign with a client, and let's say it's a new hashtag and nobody is using it, right? Cricket, cricket. How do you get people to A, use that hashtag, and B, if nobody is using it, how do you change direction and start going like, hey, you know, I see that people are feeling X about this brand. Here's what we're going to do to change that sentiment.
Okay, that's a brilliant question. And it's exactly the trick to making a campaign work or not. Have you got it right from an emotional impact point of view? Have you got it right in terms of the psychology of the person you're actually trying to address? Which means that before you even start, you have to have a degree of empathy with them, and then try and solve something which they need to solve, or try and connect with them on something which is important to them, not just you. And the way we test this, of course, is if the hashtag is new, and we can look at the comments and look at the responses. If the hashtag isn't going anywhere, and what are hashtags? I mean, you mentioned before that they're, you know, essentially they save us a lot of trouble in not using keywords, but also hashtags that are shorthand in their own right. You know, when we use the hashtag food for thought, for instance, and we put that hashtag on a comment or on a share of an article, what have we actually said? We have marked that content as something which is thoughtful, it's going to have a long-term impact, and it's probably fairly topical and will make us reconsider a lot of things. And we've done it so easily with that hashtag, which is essentially a shorthand for so many things. If a hashtag doesn't do these things, then obviously you shaped it wrong, your aim is wrong, your connection is wrong with the audience, you need to go back and rethink it. And it's always better to see that as soon as possible, rather than, you know, having spent a month or 2 months running a campaign and thinking, oh, this doesn't work, I better go back to the drawing board.
Throw more money at it, it must work that way.
That's a classic mistake.
So how do you use that? So let's say I started a campaign to find out, I don't know, I want to promote, I don't know, like now drawing a blank.
Let's say you start a hashtag the perfect product.
There you go.
Which could really make a really good hashtag, provided you have a product that
is
really really sums it up. Now, if you haven't, however, and this is what you've done, the first thing you'll see is that first of all the hashtag isn't going very far. Secondly, you'll see that people resharing the content are probably adding their own hashtag. And that's, you know, you can see what they're doing. So if somebody says the perfect product not,
why?
You know that you're getting things wrong. And then, you know, also you can see the impact.
Wait, that was a reference to Amazon, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm not saying anything. But you can, I mean, you know, it's funny, but you can see it's almost like code when you use a hashtag, right? So it actually, you can see it through many layers. And it shows a great deal of awareness. But that's the thing about getting it right in the first instance. You can see very quickly if you have, you know, is it resonating? If it is, it actually begins to get reshared and mentioned, and the comments have a very positive sentiment and perhaps neutral. If they're negative in tone, you know, you're getting things wrong somewhere, and you need to basically go back and rethink it.
So you shared, let's say I started to write content with the perfect product, and I'm sharing it out there, and I am just, you know, me with not a lot of followings because I don't I don't have a mailing list. I don't have any presence on social media. I'm just starting out. So there's not going to be a lot of shares and a lot of engagement with my content yet. We did talk about how to start generating engagement, but I want to see how you approach that.
Well, there are two ways you can approach it. The first one is that you can create the kind of content that's going to resonate not just on the product you're actually selling, but the impact around it. So if, for instance, you have a perfect product, and what's the usual thing to do is explain why it's perfect, right? And expect people to understand. But who cares? It's about you. And what are you going to say? No, it isn't perfect. I'm lying. You're not going to say that.
Right.
But if you put a post together explaining, is it possible to create a perfect product? Or what does it take to create a perfect product? Well, I want to know that. You want to know that, right? Because we're all intrigued by that. Is it possible? Is there such thing even? And if it is, well, how much is it worth? Is it going to be billions or is it just a few cents? That kind of post travels a lot further than just its target audience, which is the whole point of using a social media platform. You're not just looking for the target audience, you're looking to find a target audience economically, which means that essentially you need to hit a broad base of people, not through your own efforts, but through the efforts of others. Otherwise, we're back to the expensive advertising equation. So in order for that, you need to resonate with people who actually are part of the potential audience you're aiming at, and they have the kind of connection and interaction with that kind of content you'll create. So that content has to be top-notch. That's one of the strategies. The second thing is find a few people who do have a large following and who are actually active in the sphere you're targeting. So, it's no good, for instance, going to, let's say, Martin Servington, who's got about 1 million followers, and saying, hey, Martin, I've got this post. I'm sure it'll be good for your audience. Why don't you just share it with them? Because he's not going to do it, right?
No.
Which is so exactly. And it's stupid to expect him to. Okay, it's not going to happen. If, on the other hand, Martin does talk about how many products are imperfect, or the fact that we get ripped off by companies who create something which is not great, but they have a great campaign around. The campaign costs a lot of money. They need to recoup the money from the campaign and make a profit, so they price the product artificially expensive because now it costs a lot of money, not for the product, but for the promotion. So if somebody's actually talking about that, then you can say, hey, we actually have this, which we think is great, and it does resonate to what you're talking about, and we're willing to actually show it to you. So, if you get into the kind of discussion, then you have an intelligent connection with somebody who will be able to share it, not because you ask them to, but because it actually fits in with what they're doing. Which means, again, as a marketer, you need to be aware of what's happening. You can't just go on Facebook and say, oh, Facebook, 7 billion people. I'm going to just market to all of them. It doesn't happen.
You can. It's just going to cost you $1 billion.
Yes.
But you said something super smart, of course, all over this 40 minutes. But one more gem of a nugget. You said find the conversation, find the people who are already talking about the stuff that you want to connect with. And this is what NOD3x is really great at. It's great at finding the people that are already talking about your topic. And now, rather than marketing to them, you jump into the conversation, just like you said, either in the comments or you share their information with your 2 cents and compliment them, and now you just build a nice relationship with someone, and you add those people to your following so that you start following them, engaging with them, building the relationship with them. Eventually they'll come and find out that you really do have the perfect product.
Yep, exactly. And it's a kind, how human is all this? How non-marketing in terms of traditional stuff? And as you said, it's possible.
How uncommon this common sense is.
Yes. And again, it's made possible by taking the data through NOD3x and humanizing it, actually seeing what the impact is, seeing who are the people, who is their audience, what are they doing, what is important to them, what is the conversation they're actually holding, and then connecting like that. Otherwise, you're going to get to somebody who perhaps only posts nautical news, and you're going to say, this is my perfect product. Please share it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And you know what? I remember I interviewed Amanda Blaine way back when she was the first one to get 1 million followers. And we had a hangout just about like, hey, you got 1 million followers, congrats, how does it feel? And she said it's lousy, because now the amount of spam and content and requests that she's getting all the time from people of like, share my stuff, it's just unbearable. And what's really interesting is that, you know, I was thinking about that. When you're finally wealthy, guys, when you're going to get to the place that you wanted to be, you're rich, wealthy, and famous, and everybody knows that. How do you know that the people who are approaching you are sincerely interested in you, or are acting from self-interest? And now you become very suspicious of everyone, and it's harder to build relationships. And all of a sudden, someone comes along and all they do is support you and help you and share you and don't ask anything in return. Now a true friendship can be developed, which is all what friendship is about, right? It's about caring for each other, not trying to get something out of each other.
Well, it's not really difficult to define human quality, which is what my next book is about, actually, which is trust. and it's trust is, you know, it's how you develop trust. So if somebody you're right.
Sorry, I just need to do. This is what my next book is about.
Well, you know, the moment you have any kind of connections, anybody, you know, you get people coming to you. If you get a sense that you don't trust their motives, or if you get a sense that, you know, they're just seeing you as a gateway person, they don't really care what you do, they're just using you today for this, and they're going to use tomorrow for something else, and they're going to go on to the next person, well, then you're unlikely to want to form a relationship with them. And the trust algorithm that you run in your head, it doesn't matter whether you're big or small, rich or not so rich, goes through the same processes every time. And usually people who are more in the public eye, they get fairly adept at sensing that, hey, you know, this is just an attempt to catch my attention, and moving away from it quickly. But that's just practice.
Yeah, and this is actually follows into one of the things that we're saying on social media. Find the influencers, find the influencers, find the influencers. Well, when you find the influencers and you get there from a self-interest, you know,
point of view, yeah.
Point of view and interest, yeah, right? Then people feel that. And one of the beauties of Hangout is that people feel that. If you're authentic or you're not authentic, relationship cannot be built on fake or self-interest. And so when you're using NOD3x to find the influencers, you're not just finding them so that they will share your content and your product. You're finding them to really build relationships with like-minded people in your niche. And when you build those relationships, you will elevate yourself, you will get, you know, to be in the company of great people, and eventually they might share your product. Not, you know, doesn't have to happen like that.
Well, it always helps to be able to connect with people who are already doing stuff at a higher level, because it tends to drag you up. It's always a learning curve. You can see things, you can see how things work for them, you can see what they're doing, you can see mistakes perhaps which you should avoid, and that becomes a great learning curve. But that's the whole beauty of the entire social media ecosphere. We are mostly trying to elevate each other through the sharing of knowledge, content, ideas, opinions, suggestions, and comments. You know, I know we get a small percentage of very voluble, very visible trolls who just want to burn the universe and live in a cave. But you know, if we sort of disregard that, the rest of us are trying to use each other's ideas to basically build better constructs, to basically build better ideas. And if we can do that, it's a cooperative model, it's a co-creational one. We get a sense that we are all sort of going in the right direction together, and that's a very positive outcome.
Love that. And hold on. Oh yeah. Okay, I'm not. I want to share what John was saying, and he was saying that that this right here, understand how the human connection works through the data interface, is one of the best explanation of what NOD3x is that I've ever heard. And right there is, oops, sorry. Thanks, thanks about that. But there was another one that was great, and I just missed it. There we go. Nope, not this one, but thank you very much, Coach Lori. And there was someone that's saying, David, it's funny that how come when you explain something, I understand it.
You know,
I can't find it for some reason.
I always struggle with things in my head. I think about them at great depth, and it's only when they make sense to me that actually I can relate them to somebody. So in the moment that something makes sense, I get really excited, and I tend to sort of put it out there because it also helps me clarify it. So that's why.
And you have a really interesting way of going about writing books, and now you're writing your next book, Trust. But the way that you're going about writing it and promoting it later on is very, very unique. And I remember you saying that with your previous book, where you just shared the content on the web and actually used social media to help you write the book. Are you still doing that with this book?
I still do, yes. Especially on trust, for something which is so critical to the entire human condition, we have only just now begun to understand what trust is, how it works, how it propagates in social networks, how it is gained, and how it is lost. And the frightening thing about all this is that there's also a mathematical element to the calculation of trust, which can be machine learning propagated or powered. So essentially, we can use machines to some extent to filter trustworthy comments, trustworthy people, trustworthy personalities on the web, and so on. All of this makes for a very complicated and complex picture. And as I sort of delve, a lot of it is in original research. I sort of go through reams and reams every week. Every nugget I get, I sort of tend to share it on the web, and we get quite a good discussion about it. And it's interesting to also see people's reactions. Sometimes it's so obvious that they say, oh, wow, I didn't think about that. That's brilliant. And sometimes people react negatively, which is also important because it means that there's a raw nerve somewhere which has been touched. You know, somebody's doing perhaps not what they should be doing, and you see a trust model developing. They want to go away. They don't want that to be there. And that's fascinating as well.
So guys, if you have ever thought of writing books, but even aside of that, every time you think about starting a business or launching a new product or developing something new, before you put so much effort into it, you can use social media and NOD3x especially to find out what the sentiment around your product is. Do people even need that? Are you going to go and spend like years developing something that people don't even need? So NOD3x is a great is a great tool in helping you discover the conversations and the problems, like David was saying, where are the buttons that people need pushed or the solutions that they need that you can help give them, and thus make money in the process, build a following, and become an authority. Does that kind of sum it up, David?
So absolutely, I think it's good, and I'm glad you mentioned the commercial element. Make money. At the end of the day, we all need to make a living, right? I mean, there's no question about it. But what is different these days is that first of all, we're transparent about it, and secondly, it stops about just us being there to make a living. Yes, we're there to do that, but how we do it and how we go about it has actually changed, and we are more open in terms of understanding the impact of what we do. We understand that the people we rely on to perhaps buy our products or buy our books or promote our services are there to also solve something. And if what we do doesn't do it for them, then they're unlikely to do anything for us, unless we take them at gunpoint, perhaps.
Right. And there's a great comment here that people are using. Denver just shared trust. 9 out of 10 mothers choose Chief.
Yeah, yes. I mean, that's such a cool one. And Denver, thank you very much for making that. I mean, in the past, we used to use social proof, which was given to us by an authority figure, and we were expected to fall in line,
right?
Go with the crowd. And here are the elements which worked at the time. First of all, an authority figure gave it to us. So somebody wearing a white lab coat with a clipboard, and perhaps horn rim spectacles, because we needed to trust them.
The doctors.
And they would say, yeah, they would say, doctors, scientists, it'd be like 49 out of 50 washing machine manufacturers use Skip, for instance. You think, oh, that's amazing, a scientist said that. And 49 out of 50 actually do it. I must do it. But how we've grown up since then. First of all, we don't trust authority if we don't understand it. So if somebody says, I'm an authority figure, we'll say, yeah, great. How did you become that authority figure? Who put you there? How do we check that? How do we get rid of you if we don't like you? We need to be able to answer those 4 things. And if we can't, then we distrust those people because it's a non-transparent process. And then when they actually tell us something, we can see it, we can assess it, we can, these days, talk back to them. And if they ignore us, if they ignore our questions, if they don't want to hear what we want to ask, well then, alarm bells go off. Again, this is where brands basically become obsolete sometimes in their approach because it's still a one-way conversation. NOD3x changes all of this. It makes things transparent. You know, we're talking about semantic data, semantic processes, transparency rules, and essentially it allows us to you know, strip things away and make the connection very human.
That's true. And you know what? It's so funny because you started this conversation saying that, you know, we're talking about the mailing list and like, hey, buy my shit. And not right. And now we're moving around and actually we're getting to the point of like, the only reason why I buy something is because I trust you to actually solve my problem. And who do I trust? I trust my friends, my family, and the social connections that I made online, like you and I, David. And to build that trust, that does not happen overnight. It's going to be, you can't fake relationship. I always joke about that, right? Guys can fake relationships. Women fake other things. But but seriously, if you want to build this in a brand, you cannot fake relationships. And it's going to take a while to build and so quickly to destroy. So as you build that trust online, don't expect to come in using NOD3x, start talking to people, and all of a sudden you have an audience. You might have traffic for a little while, but you have to develop it. And in order to develop the people who are interested in it, pull marketing rather than push marketing, you can use tools like NOD3x to show you exactly who are the people that are interested in your topic so that you can reach out and help them and develop a conversation rather than going to the entire world with your business card going like, buy my book.
That's right, yeah. But here's my card. Give me a call. I'm great. Yeah, right.
I have an awesome car that you want to buy.
Yeah.
Never been broken in. And so let me, guys, we opened the Hangout to you to jump in. We only have like 8 more minutes, so if you have something to say and you want to add it, please jump in. I want to welcome Gidon. Glad that you made it here. And John and Oleg and Coach G. And I see a lot of conversation. Molly's here, and Saniv is here, and John, of course. But we have with us in the Hangout the amazing Bill Reid. Hey, Bill.
Hey, how you guys doing? Nice to meet you all again.
Hi, Bill.
Awesome having you.
So my big question is, so David, when you're getting ready to write a book or write an article and you're trying to get the biggest impact out of it, you know, are you writing a number of different, or putting together a number of different projects, you know, around key phrases and hashtags, or you're focusing on creating the perfect project that's going to get you all the information in one shot? And then how do you take that information and then formulate it into a cohesive story that you want to tell without, I guess, losing your original message just because maybe the ebb and flow of emotions are different than maybe what you're writing about?
Okay, that's a good question. Before social media came along, books were conceived about, tested, and created in a silo. And when they came out of a silo ready-made, then the publisher's job was to sell it to the public. And how difficult or easy that job was depended completely on the publisher's grasp of what the public wanted. Now, bear in mind that it takes anything between 12 and 18 months for a book to be written. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer. So from the time of conception to the time we get that book into bookstores and the marketing begins in earnest, you've already got an 18-month time lag where the public's needs and motivation has moved on. Mm-hmm. So that's how difficult the job was back then. Now things move a little bit faster now. You know, books can be written between 6, 9, and 12 months. And in that process, the author, if they're doing the job right, is in direct contact with their potential audience, which in the past was never the case. So they're very aware of the motivation of the audience, of the obstacles they face, or the difficulties they face. And case in point, I sort of put out a lot of stuff, and I see not just how people react, but also what impact it has, what obstacles they face, and you know the conversation can get very detailed. How that impacts on my writing, essentially, I start off with an idea, and every book beyond the stage of the idea also has to have a purpose. It has to solve something. It has to have to help solve a problem or answer a difficult question. If it doesn't do any of that, just presenting an idea, while it may be intellectually pleasing, from a practical point of view, well, it's next to useless. It won't do anything. Yes, we might read it if we have the time, but who has the time these days to actually allow time for reading that just intellectually pleases us? So it really has to have a practical focus or impact. Now, that practical focus and impact should get concentrated and refined as the writing of the book goes along. And that's why I write in such an open manner. It allows me to be confident in the shaping of the material which I put together.
Now, when you're taking that material and putting it together, so throughout the period of time in which you're writing a book, let's say, when you're publishing an article here and there, are you publishing in ways, I'm just wondering if this is part of your process, where you might publish ideas in an article that might have something to do with what you're writing as a test bed, in a way, to see how.
Sometimes, yeah, I see what you mean. Yes.
Impact is.
Yes. Sometimes I may use an article. I write for magazines and I write for Forbes, and this is paid article work. Mm-hmm. So it's always a fine line between experimenting to your own benefits for articles which they've paid you and which they need to benefit from.
Right.
But I mean, sometimes the opportunity presents itself where I get a little bit of a crossover where the two overlap, and I can broach a subject which I'm thinking about, but present in a way which can then also help the publishing platform I'm writing for, and then I can gauge from the reaction how dead center my thoughts were, or how new they are, what impact they have, and so on. So then I will do that. But this is not the main strategy of what I use. This is opportunistic and very occasional. The main strategy which I use always when I write a book is I share, in my case, I use Google Plus extensively. I will share my thoughts, ideas, and processes as I'm moving along in my posts, and the original posts for Google Plus only. And the reason I do that is because I have a following in Google Plus which will engage with those posts. And then the conversation is very immediate, and I always take part in the conversation. I don't just put it out there and go off in my merry way.
Right.
So
it's a much more collaborative, platform.
Yes.
In my
yes.
opinion.
I mean, exactly. So that allows me to make sure that the ideas I put together actually work for my audience, because they're my ideas. When I have them, it doesn't matter how good or bad they are. To me, they're always perfect. But when I present them for everybody else, then I can see those ideas through the eyes of the audience. I can see it through your eyes. I can see it through the eyes of everybody else who comments. And then I can see, yes, this is the right thing, or no, this is, the way I phrased this and the way I presented it makes absolutely no sense to the audience because they haven't read 100 research papers I have. So now I have to rework that so it makes sense for the audience. And that's what actually helps me.
I love that. Do you use NOD3x at all when you're writing books, kind of like to see what the sentiment around the web, or for research, or?
No, I don't. I mean, I use it at the research stage before an idea is actually formed. But once I start researching a book, because now it is sort of fixed in terms of what it's going to do, then I stopped using NOD3x for that purpose. Simply because, you're always going to find divergent views, and you're not sure at the time, are they temporary, are they not, so essentially it's a distraction.
Gotcha. So, guys, we are at the top of the hour, and I love what the key idea that we got out of it, which is basically get back to being a person, people. It doesn't matter if it's online or in real life. The way you behave with people in real life, bring that to your social conversations, and what's going to happen is that you're going to build true relationships with people that will be happy to not only buy from you, but also spread the word about you. And one of the best tools to do that is NOD3x, because it allows you to see the sentiment, the conversations, how people are feeling about a topic. And the one way to use it is with the hashtag. Oops. So Google Voice. So David, thank you so much for being here on such a short notice and just sharing a wealth of information with us. And I can't wait to read your new book when it's coming out.
It's coming out end of September. We still haven't got a final title because it has a working title, so I can't really share very much. The moment I can, I will announce it.
On Google+, of course.
Of course.
No, sure. So thank you guys, everyone, for joining us and for the amazing conversations. And we'll see you in the following training. See you later.
Take care. Take care.